Which Alma are we on?
We're going to be at the top of Kuf Ches Amud Aleph, or we're starting at the bottom, like the last line of Kuf Zion Amud Beis. Okay, so what we did yesterday was we said, according to the Gemara, that if you would wash your hands before Kiddush, that's a way of showing that I'm not interested in making Kiddush on wine because there would be too much of a break between the wine to the hamotzi. So a person should either hear Kiddush from somebody else or they should make Kiddush on the challah right then and there. Except the Ramah, he says that people from German Jewry and other places, they do this as a lechachila every week, that they wash, make Kiddush on grape juice or wine, and then they will make hamotzi without talking. They rely on that except for Seder night, because if you would wash before Kiddush, it'd be too long of a break with all the magid, all of the telling of the story. Then we talked about Chamar Medina, about using other drinks besides grape juice or wine. There is a heter, a leniency to use it Shabbos day, and also for Havdalah, if we didn't have any wine available, or if it's the 9 days and we're not allowed to have wine. Friday night, though, it would be better to use a loaf of bread, or the challah. We just don't do that Shabbos day because then it's not, it doesn't seem special enough that we usually start with a loaf of bread or some type of bread, even Tuesday lunch. So what's special about Shabbos? At least Friday night we have the bracha, the Kaddish Shabbos. So that's how we get away with it. Shabbos day we don't do that, and we also don't use challah Motzei Shabbos or Havdalah because we do not say Havdalah b'makom suda. That Havdalah needs a meal. We only say that by Kiddush. And lastly, we talked about a need to taste mali lugmav, to taste a cheekful of whatever you're drinking. The cup needs to ideally hold a revius, so that would be 4.4 fluid ounces according to the Mishnah Brura, anywhere from there to 5.3 fluid ounces according to the Chazon Ish. Shabbos day, it gets a little bit lighter. I looked it up, 3.3 fluid ounces. Anything that is durabanan, a rabbinic mitzvah like Shabbos day Kiddush, would be okay for 3.3 ounces. So if a person wants to get a little fancy and use Chamar Medina, let's say schnapps Shabbos day, so you have to drink, you have to finish the 3.3 ounces of schnapps. It's a big commitment. And ideally a person would be able to have a whole cheekful at once. That could be hard,
that, Stan?
depending on the person.
Stan, you listening, Stan?
Yeah, it could be hard depending on the person, but there are opinions that say that everybody that's hearing Kiddush could help in finishing it, although ideally it would be better for the person that made the bracha to finish it themselves. Okay, so then at the end of yesterday, we were talking about when the Mishnah said you're not allowed to eat meal foods samach lemincha, half an hour before some type of mincha. We weren't sure whether that's mincha gedola, or which would be 12 p.m. noon, or mincha ketana, which would be 3 p.m. on the dot. So we came out, we think 3 p.m. It's samach lemincha ketana. And then it's trying to figure out what else are we allowed to have the afternoon before the Seder. We said definitely vegetables, maybe different types of meat. So the last bit that we were working on yesterday is maybe you would be able to drink wine. Because if you would drink wine, it would make you hungrier for the mitzvah of matzah. And then you could have it the afternoon before Seder night. Halacha comes out, little spoiler alert, that we could not drink between 1 to 2 glasses of wine the afternoon, if anybody's interested in wine, the afternoon before the Seder. Less than 1 is okay, because it doesn't fill you, or more than 2 is okay, because then it gets you hungry, but somewhere between 1 and 2 glasses of wine, these revius numbers we just gave, between 1 and 2 of those would be problematic. Okay, so now the Gemara is trying to figure out, how do we know that wine has the capacity, at least between 1 and 2 glasses, to fill you up? So it says, Ditanan. We're quoting a Mishnah, now at the top, Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. So it says, Bein HaKosas Halalu. Between specific glasses of wine in the Seder. Im ratza lishtos yishte. If you want to drink, bavakasha, go right ahead. It says, ben shlishi l'revi'i though, lo yishte. Between specifically the third and the fourth glass of wine, we are not allowed to drink. Rashi and the Rashbam explain because it makes it look like we're adding on to the specific numbers. We can talk a little later. It's quoting a Gemara later on, maybe another 10 daf, why drinking between the first and the second is all right. Between the second and third is also all right because that's the meal, if you want to have wine with your meal. So the Gemara is asking, okay, you want to tell me that between the third and the fourth, I'm not allowed to do it. V'i amris misad sayid. But if you want to tell me that wine fills you up, amai yishta. Why are you allowed to drink between the first kos and the second kos? Because it's not going to fill you up before the matzah later on after the second glass. It says, ha ka'achil l'matzah achila gasa. Just like the problem we had before. It's not going to bring you to an achilas gasa, to an overeating, and then you're not going to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah seder night. Ella, shmamina, migr garir. Rather, we'll learn from there that wine has the potential to make you hungry, not fill you up, if it's over 2 glasses. Rav Sheshes hava yasiv b'tanisa kol mali yuma de pischa. So they're still not happy with this mincha kitana business that we could eat from, that we had to stop eating from 3 o'clock. It wants to still push further. Maybe it's 12 o'clock. Why? Because there's this one rabbi. His name is Rav Sheshes. He would sit in a fast the entire Erev Pesach. He would not eat anything. Now, Nema Kasava Rav Sheshes, Samach Lemincha Gedola Tanan. Maybe Rav Sheshes, he wouldn't have eaten until 12 o'clock anyway, and he holds that you're not allowed to eat from Mincha Gedola. Why? Umishum Pischahu, and it's really a problem of his carbon Pesach, like what we explained before. Dilma Mimshach Ba'asiliam Nuye Mila'avet Pischahu. Maybe it's going to prevent you from doing the carbon Pesach, so you can't eat even from 12 noon. Except the only problem is Rav Sheshes holds that you can't eat, he would not eat all day. So if we say the reason is because of the carbon Pesach, because of the Pesach offering, well, why did he not eat all day? So he holds that the time for the carbon Pesach is all day. You're allowed to start it from sunrise. We don't hold like that. We say that we could do the carbon Pesach from 12:30 p.m. on a halachic clock, but he holds otherwise. The V'sabar law, kiha. He holds like this. The Amar Rabbi Yoshaya, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Machshir Haya ben Beseira bePesach Shishachtu Shachris ba'Arba Asar Lishmo Umid Safra San Peschahu. He holds that you are allowed to give your carbon Pesach even from Shachris, even from the morning time, and he holds that the entire day is really kosher. It's good for your carbon Pesach. How does he know that? The Kuli Yoma Chazila Pescha. The entire day is good for the carbon Pesach. The Savar, because he understands from this pasuk in Shemos. It quotes Bein Harbayim, when the pasuk says that you should bring your carbon Pesach. Bein Harbayim. Bein Harbayim, the way we translate it and understand, means the afternoon. So you're allowed to bring your carbon Pesach in the afternoon. He says no. Bein Erev de Esmol, Ma'erev de Ha'idna. So he says, Bein Harbayim means between the evening of yesterday until the evening of today, which means once you hit sunrise, anything from sunrise to sunset is okay to bring your carbon Pesach, and that's why Rav Sheshes would fast the entire day of Erev Pesach before the Seder, lest he not bring his carbon Pesach properly. So once we see that Rav Sheshes is basing his eating off of, is it going to stop my carbon Pesach or not? So maybe we'll learn from Rav Sheshes that we should stop eating at 12 noon, because we hold that the carbon Pesach starts from 12 noon. We should stop eating at 12 noon. No, answers the Gemara. Shiny Rav Sheshes to Istine Hava. Rav Sheshes is a little bit different. He's just called Istinis. And Istinis is somebody that's very sort of obsessive compulsive. And if he has anything to eat, even the slightest amount, he's going to feel full. And he doesn't feel that he's going to be fulfilling the mitzvah Seder night properly, the eat toyim, but safra, that if he would taste anything in the morning, mi la orte lo hava mahani le michla, even at nighttime, by the time night comes around, he's still not going to be able to eat matzah in the fullest way, in the best way that he feels that he could. But for people like us, hopefully that doesn't happen, we would be able to eat all the way. We see that the reason really is lest we would become too full for the Seder that night. So we say that we need to stop 9 halachic hours into the day. That's around 3 p.m. on a perfect 12-hour schedule. But if you go to myzmanim.com, they line up the perfect times for us. myzmanim.com, you can plug in a zip code anywhere around the globe. You can even tell them which flight you're going to be on. And they'll tell you if the flight takes off at this time, then the Zman, the certain specific time is for this. It's a very, very cool program. But we see here that the halacha is we do not eat from 9 hours into the day, at least meal-type foods, lest a person would be full for the eating of matzah Seder night. Okay. And that is the halacha. So we're at the 2 dots. We're quoting the next part of the Mishnah. Next part of the Mishnah says, "V'afilu ani shebi Yisrael lo yochal ad sheyasev." Even a poor person needs to do what's called heseba. Heseba, as many of us know, is the leaning that we do during the Seder, during the eating of matzah, and also during the drinking of the wine. The reason why we do the heseba, the leaning, is because that's the way back in the good old days that kings would sit as they would eat. They'd be like on a comfy couch and sit back like this on their left. So we do that Seder night, that as we're coming out from abdas to cheirus, from slavery to freedom. So we remind ourselves that we are free and we should eat beheseba. So it says even a poor person is required to do that. Everybody's got to feel free Seder nights. No matter how rich, no matter how poor, everybody's got to feel free. So what exactly requires heseba? That's going to be up to some debate, as we're going to see. Idmar, it said, matzah tzarech heseba. Matzah does require heseba, because matzah represents freedom, as we left Mitzrayim. But maror ain tzarech heseba. The maror, the bitter herbs, do not the bitter herbs, the maror, right? So the maror, the spicy hot stuff that we eat right after matzah, so that would require that we're not allowed to have heseba, because it's supposed to make us sad. It's supposed to remind us of all the torture that Egypt put us through. Use your imagination from any horror movie you've seen, how people are tortured. That's what we're supposed to remember from Mitzrayim. So that does not require heseba. Then we say, Yayin idmar mashmei de Reb Nachman tzarech heseba. Wine, it was said in front of Reb Nachman, does need heseba. The idmar mashmei de Reb Nachman ain't tzarech heseba. But others say that Reb Nachman said that we do not need heseba on wine. So some people say that Reb Nachman says we need heseba on wine. Others say not. Below pligi, they're not really arguing. Habatarti kasi kamai, habatarti kasi basrai. They're arguing about the 2 kosos, the 2 glasses of wine before, the 2 earlier ones before the meal, and some are saying about the later cups after the meal. Amri lo lahai gisa, but amri lo lahai gisa. And each opinion is going to argue a different way, that maybe the glasses before would need heseba and not the ones after, and also vice versa, that the glasses before would not need heseba, but the ones after the meal would, as we're going to see. Amri lo lahai gisa. So some say it this way: the trei kasi kamai bo heseba. The first glasses before the meal need heseba. Why? Dehashtahu dekot matachila la cheiros. Because in the beginning of the Seder, we're trying to remind ourselves that we're free. So that means that those are the 2 that we need heseba. Trei kasi basrai, but the later 2 after the meal though, lobo heseba, those do not need leaning. Might have a hava. It's old news. Once we're past the meal, we're already into the Seder enough. According to this opinion, we do not need a reminder to lean, to feel free. So it says, Hai shaita dika havya cheres tre kasi kamai bobo heseba dekanti evadim hayinu ka'amar. So according to the second opinion says that the first two glasses do not need heseba because at the beginning of the Seder, we're still ba'avdos, we're still in slavery. So why should we lean according to this opinion? Hashta de'idmar hachi. So according to this opinion, though, after the meal, we would need heseba because after the meal, we're free. So the first opinion says that the beginning we need heseba, the later glasses do not need heseba, and the second opinion says the complete opposite, that the beginning does not need heseba, and the later ones do. Well, it basically says from the fact that we have two different opinions. Some of the opinions say that we need heseba in the beginning, and some of the opinions say we need heseba in the end, then we say all four. We say all four glasses are going to need heseba, just to fulfill all the opinions. So, as we say, be'idmar hachi, idi be'idi, bo heseba. So therefore, all the opinions, we hold that all four glasses are going to need leaning. What kind of leaning? Well, prakdan lo shemei heseba. What's referred to as prakdan literally means lying on your back. That is not considered heseba. It's actually a health concern, right? Many of us wouldn't eat on our back because we would choke. So that's not considered heseba. That's not called getting free if we would end up choking on the food. So heseba yamin lo shema heseba. Leaning on your right side instead of your left would not be considered heseba. The Rashi and the Rashbam explain because a right-handed person, if you're leaning like this, well, you don't have as much control over your arm to bring up more matzah or to bring up your wine to your mouth. Below od, that's not the only reason. Elishema yaktim kana lebeshet v'yavo lidei sakana. If you're leaning on your right, I don't know if it's medically accurate, maybe our doctors can help us out, but the Gemara says that the food is more likely to go into your windpipe than to your esophagus, and it could lead to choking. So because we have these two opinions, one is that we have more control over our right hand if we're leaning on our left. The other is that by leaning on our left, the food is more likely to go into our esophagus, into our stomach, than rather our windpipe and choke. So even a lefty person person that eats with their left hand, leaning on the right, well, I have complete control of my left hand, leaning on my right. If I'm a lefty, no, but because the second opinion says that leaning on your left helps the food go down your esophagus, then even a lefty should have his seba on their left side. All the more so, a right-handed person should have his seba on their left side. This is very interesting. Gemara says, Isha eitzel baila lo bai heseba. A woman, married woman, sitting in front of her husband does not require heseba, does not require leaning. Rashi and the Rashbam explain because women typically have like a fear of their husband. So because of that, they wouldn't be able to lean. Even if it's Seder night to remind them of freedom, it's still not appropriate to lean, says the Gemara. But if she's what's called an isha chashuva, a valuable, important lady, then she does need heseba. So what comes out in the halacha, the Ramah says that today, every single woman, Baruch Hashem, is considered an isha chashuva, right? A lot of women, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're scientists, they have important positions in society. So they're considered isha chashuva, maybe they should lean in front of their husbands. Except, says the Ramah, he brings the Rav Yah. The Rav Yah says, I haven't met somebody in hundreds of years that kings, famous people, they lean like this when they eat. So because that women, says the Ramah, have two strikes against them. One, that the Rav Yah, that nobody leans when they eat anymore, even noble people. And two, that women technically shouldn't even lean in front of their husbands because they have fear of him. So they shouldn't lean. That's what the Ramah says. Again, ask a local posek. I know my wife, she does lean at the Seder. when I was learning this a few years ago, so I told her, I said, I don't personally have a Masorah on this. I come from a non-from family. But her mother leaned her whole life. That's what my wife grew up with. So,
Rabbi, don't you realize that all women are important?
right, that's what we're saying. The Ramah says that all women today are an Isha Chashuva. They're all
Exactly.
important
So
women. What's that?
everybody's an Isha Chashuva. Well, every woman is, and therefore they should all lean.
Right, but paired that with the Rav Yah that says that nobody noble today leans, so women have like two strikes against them. One, that they wouldn't lean in front of their husbands because they would have fear. Two, the Rav Yah says that nobody leans today anyway. Men only have one of those problems. The Rav Yah says that people don't lean today. So men, for sure, would lean. The married women leaning is up to an argument, up to machlokis. Again, ask local posek, or if you have a specific Masorah, it's always for sure a specific tradition. Whatever you have done in the past, it's probably important to continue doing that. But it's just interesting note how the Ramah works out this halacha from the Gemara. Okay. Next, a little more relevant for everybody, even in today's generation, Ben Eitzel Aviv by Haseba. A son eating at their father's table would still need Haseba. Even though that sons are supposed to fear their fathers. I know that whenever our children get in trouble, they say, my wife says, make sure you don't want to get daddy over here because then it's going to be all over. Okay, so we have a little bit of fear for our fathers, but still not so much, says Rashi in the Rashbam. So the Ben sitting at their father's table would still require Haseba. All right. Ibaylahu, Talmud Eitzel Rabbo. My. Once you tell me about father and son, what about a Rebbe to his student? Should a student have to lean at his Rebbe's table? Is he allowed to? Maybe he should have to show some type of fear or honor toward his Rebbe. Toshma. So we come learn in the Brisa. Abai ki habinan be'mar zikinan avirchi dehadadi. So there were a bunch of, the Rebbe had over his whole shiur, right? He had his whole class over, and basically none of them wanted to lean fully outright. They're a little embarrassed to do it in front of the Rebbe, so they're sort of leaning on each other so that they're not all the way leaning back. And the Rebbe basically told them that Ki asin lebei Rav Yosef Amar Lon lo tzrichaso. You don't need to do that. There's no reason for a student to have his seba in front of their Rebbe. Why? Because Mora Rabbeich Kamara Shemayim. The fear of one's Rebbe should be like the fear that they have of the heavens, because a Rebbe represents Torah to their students. So they should not be having his seba in front of their Rebbe. Ask the Gemara, Meisvei, Im Hakol Adam Meisiv, V'afilu Talmud Eitzel Rabbo. It says everybody is supposed to lean, even a student that's sitting by their teacher. Well, it's answering, Kitanya hahi b'shuya denagri. If a person has an internship by, let's say they're going to learn to become a carpenter, apprenticeship, better word. If they're going to learn to become a carpenter, so if they go to their teacher's house, that's the kind of heseba that they would, that's the kind of heseba that we are talking about, that a student could have to their teacher. According to this Gemara, then a student could not lean in front of the Rebbe. The halacha does come out, though, brought down the Shulchan Aruch, that if the Rebbe gives them permission, then they would be able to have heseba. They would be able to lean even at their Rebbe's table. There is a discussion in the Gemara in Kedushin. If a Rav can basically say, that's all right, you don't need to give me kavod. So one of the sides in the Gemara over there in Kedushin, around Daf Lamed, Lamed Aleph, something like that, is that a Rav, why does he get honor? He gets honor for kavod HaTorah, because he's representing the Torah. So why, says the Gemara in Kedushin over there, why should the Rav be able to give up their honor? Because it's not their honor to give up. It's Hashem's. And Hashem's not letting go of the honor. He still demands that people honor the Torah. So maybe the Rav doesn't have the availability to give up his honor either. But the Gemara comes out not like that. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch that a Rav Rabbi Brandon and I were having this discussion. I was telling him we were learning this sugya. And so we saw together that in the Shulchan Aruch, it does come out that a Rav can be mochel their kavod. They can give up their honor. And the halacha works the same way over here, that a Rebbe a student sitting at the Rebbe's Seder table would be able, if the Rebbe was a mochel the kavod and said, that's all right, go ahead and glean, they could have a seba, and that's fine. Okay. Next question. Ibaylahu shamish mai. What about a waiter? Does a waiter serving at a meal need a seba if they're waiting on a Seder table? So it says, the Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, Hashamish she'achol kazayis matzah. A waiter that ate an olive-sized piece of matzah, kishehu mesiv, yatsa. If the waiter leaned when he ate his kazayis, his olive-sized matzah, so he fulfilled the mitzvah, he's yotzei. So the Gemara makes a diuk, it makes an inference. The fact that it told us mesiv, aim, lo mesiv lo. But if a waiter did not lean to eat his matzah, then he did not fulfill the mitzvah for eating matzah. You have to lean. Shmami na, we learn out from there, boy heseba shmami na. You need heseba even if you're a waiter at the meal. The Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, nashim chayavos ba'arba kosos halalu. We say that women, even women, are chayiv in all four glasses of wine of the night. You might say that it's a mitzvah aseh shebizman grama. It's a positive time-bound mitzvah, so you might not think that women would be obligated in it, like saying Shema in the morning. Women don't have to technically do that by a certain time. So we say no, she'apin hayu ba'oso hanes, that even the women experience the miracle of Yetzias Mitzrayim, so they would be required to drink all four glasses of wine. The Rashi and the Rashbam say a little stronger than that. They say that really the miracle of Mitzrayim, the miracle of Egypt, happened because of the women. It was thanks to the women, because the women are the ones responsible for making sure their husbands are always doing the right thing in Torah and encouraging their children, giving them the love of Torah. That's all the women. So the fact that we lasted in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, for 210 or 400 years, that's all within the merit of the women. So that then when Hashem took us out, there was still a Jewish nation to take out. That's because of the women. Because of that, they need to drink the wine. The Rashi and the Rashbam also note the famous story on Purim. Esther, because she hid herself, she pretended she wasn't Jewish, and she finagled her way into the palace. That saved the Jewish people. So we see another example that women have been the highlight in saving the entire nation. There is a famous pasuk, maybe it's in Parshas Yisro somewhere. It says that the Torah was given to Beis Yaakov l'chol b'nei Yisrael. If you email me, so I can find the exact pasuk. So it says that the Torah was given to the house of Yaakov, sounds like the Jewish people, and also l'chol b'nei Yisrael, to all the children of Klal Yisrael at the same time. So Rashi notes, he says we don't really need both. Beis Yaakov is talking about what we know. Beis Yaakov is a lot of girls, the schools that girls go to. So the Torah was first given to the women, and then it was given to the men. Why is it given to the women first? Because even though that the men have the chiyuv, the obligation to learn Torah, women can, of course, men have the obligation, but it's the women's job to get the man and the family excited and to get the children of the family to love Torah. So because of that, because women, Baruch Hashem, have done such a great job throughout history, but especially in Egypt, so they are required to drink the 4 glasses of wine, Seder night, even though it's a mitzvah aseh shebizman grama, even though it's a positive time-bound mitzvah. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Arba kosos halalu sarich sheyehe bahen kidei mazigas kos yafet. We say that all 4 glasses need to have nice glasses of wine. So Baruch Hashem saying our day, we pour the wine out of the bottle and it's ready to drink. It used to be the way they poured the wine out of their bottles, they would have to mix it with water. Say like 2 or 3 times whatever amount of wine you poured into the glass, you'd have to mix with water. So the Gemara says that all 4 glasses need to be mixed. but mixed with water. But if shasan chai yatsa, if you drank them just straight, it'd be a little strong, but if you technically did drink them straight, you still would have fulfilled the mitzvah. Shasan babas achas yatsa. If you would drink them all at once, then you would fulfill the mitzvah. This comes down to an argument between the Rashi and the Rashbam. I believe it's Rashi who says drink them all at once, meaning that if you take all 4 glasses and fill them into one big glass and chug, then you would fulfill the mitzvah. The Rashbam says, I don't understand. You need 4 separate glasses. That's not 4 glasses, it's 1. Yeah, it's a big one, but it's 1. So he says what this Gemara is talking about is if you have 4 glasses lined up like a college guy, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you drink 4 separate glasses, then that would be okay. We're going to see if it is okay, but according to this opinion, it is. So, Yatsa, fine. Hishkamehen lebanav ulebnei beso, Yatsa. If you would pass it out to your friends in the meal, then technically you would be Yotze. Now let's examine this a little more. Says Gemara, Amar Rava, Shasan Chai, Yatsa. The fact that we said if you drank it straight without mixing in the water, you would be Yotze, even if it was very strong. Amar Rava, Yidei Yayin, Yatsa. You're right. You drank wine. You fulfilled the obligation to drink wine Seder night. However, Yidei Cheres, Lo Yatsa. One's obligation to experience freedom Seder night, you did not fulfill. Because most people that are free, they don't drink. I mean, today people are free, they drink stuff that's 80 proof. But if you want to experience freedom, drinking extra strong wine is not a way to do that. So if you drank it without mixing in the water, you could fulfill the mitzvah of wine, but you did not fulfill the mitzvah to experience cheres, to experience freedom. That says, shasin babas achas, if you drank them straight, whether that's all in one glass, or like the college guy, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it says, the mayor yidei yayin yatsa. Again, your wine obligation to drink, you did fulfill, because yeah, you drink wine. However, yidei arba kosos lo yatsa. The 4 glasses, you did not fulfill. Even if you drink 1, 2, 3, 4, you need to drink it according to the order of the Seder. You need to drink the first with Kiddush, and then go through Magid. At the end of Magid, drink the second, and so on and so forth. If you don't do that, then you did not fulfill the 4 glasses. Hishkamehen lebanav ulebnei beso yatsa. As we said before, you can pass what's inside the glass around to the people at your table, and technically it would be Yotze. Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, that's v'hu de ishti ruba de kasa. That's if the person, the mavarich, the person that was making the bracha, he drank most of the kos. And then other people at the meal are going to be helping him out. That's technically okay. So if we want to make Kiddush on Shnav Shabbos morning, the same halacha would apply. We want to get at least a 3.3 fluid ounce shot glass, and we would need to at least drink the first half ourselves before we passed out the rest to other people to help us out. Ideally, a person would drink the whole thing themselves. Ideally, they would do it on wine or grape juice. Nachar Medina. Okay, Meisve, we ask a question. Dalat kosas halalu sarich shehei bahen kidei revius. All 4 glasses need, according to this brisa, need to have a revius in them. Whether that's 4.4 or 5.3 fluid ounces, they all need that revius. Echad chai, echad mazug, echad chadash, echad yashan. Whether the wine is chai, it's not mixed with the water, or whether it is mazug, it is mixed with the water. Echad chadash, if it's new wine, echad yashan, if it's old wine. All these types of wine need a person to have a revius of. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, sarich shehei bo tam umar yayin. Rabbi Yehuda says that you need to have the flavor and you need to have the appearance of wine. Well, if you want the flavor, then the flavor and the appearance, then you need to not have new wine and to not have old wine. Both of those do not give the, apparently according to the Rashbam, those two do not give the taste and the appearance of regular wine. So now here's the question. Ketani, we taught. Vehas kedei revius, we said that you need to have a revius, right? Biat amris kos yafe. But now you said that I need to actually have a kos yafet, as we spoke before in the third line. The third line says that we need a kos yafet, a beautiful drink that's mixed. So, well, which is it? I need a revius, or I need something that's mixed. It sounds like it's more than a revius, because let's say I had a revius of the plain stuff without the water, then I would actually end up drinking 2 to 3 reviuses, not one. So it answers Amri Idi Chad Shiurahu. Really, we're talking all one shear. When we said a kos yafa, a beautiful glass is going to have a revius, that meant that we had really a half or a third of wine, and the rest was water. And the fact that we said a revius of wine meant that we had a revius of whatever was mixed, wine and water together. Then it says, "My kidei mezigas kos yafa." What is it that we said that you need to mix the cup well? It just means, explain what we just said. It just means that each cup needs to have a revius, whether that's straight, hardcore, undiluted wine, or it's mixed. Either one would be appropriate. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, tzarich shehebo tam umare. Except Rabbi Yehuda says that you need to have the right flavor and the right appearance. So that means that we do not have chadash and yashan. We don't have the newer wine or the older wine. It would just be a regular old wine. Amar Rava, my time at Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason that Rabbi Yehuda requires the proper appearance of the wine? Dichsid. It tells us in a pasuk from Mishlei. It says, Al tire yayin ki is adam. It says, don't look at wine when it's become red, when it's in its proper state. Because when it's in its proper state, it has the ability to get rid of a person's das, to get rid of a person's intelligence. So Seder night, that's perfect. It is appropriate to get a little bit, not drunk, but a little bit tipsy in order to properly experience the Yetzias Mitzrayim, so that it's like we are leaving Egypt ourselves. And hopefully we'll remember also that Hashem helps us in our own troubles and our own problems in life. And getting a little tipsier will help us to remember that we're a little bit less in control when we drink wine. And if we're in less control, by definition, Hashem's a little bit more control. So that's what he learned from the pasuk in Mishlei. Taner Banan, Hakol Chayavin Ba'arba Kosos, Halalu. Every person is obligated in 4 glasses of wine. Echad Nashim, the Echad Nashim, both men and women, as we said. Here's the new point, the Echad Tinokos, also kids. Kids are also obligated in all 4 glasses. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, V'chim Mato Eles Yesh Latinokos Biyayin. What are kids going to do with wine? That's not going to help them at all. So it comes out that the halacha really is that kids, at least by the age of 6 or 7, should have 4 glasses of grape juice at least. We would say ideally a smaller glass so that they could drink more than half of it. Okay, but why do we say that kids should, what special mitzvah is there for kids? Even if it's not really wine, what's a special mitzvah for kids? Ella mechalken lahem klayos v'egozim be'erev Pesach. I'm just going to flip the page. It says that we're supposed to distribute candies and nuts to our kids on the night of the Seder. Kidei shelo yishnu b'yishalu. In order so that number 1, they won't sleep, and number 2, that they're going to ask questions. So it's a very good idea, says the Gemara. If every time you want to encourage kids to ask questions at the Seder, if kids ask a question, give them candy, get them excited. Pesach night, Seder night, that's the time for chinuch. That's the time to pass over the Masorah, to pass over the tradition to the next generation. And we want to get the kids as excited as possible. So Rabbi Akiva Shahaya Mechali Klayos Yagos and the Tinokos Be'er Pesach. Why would this rabbi, Rabbi Akiva, do it? Kidei shelo yishnu b'yishalu. Same thing as before, so that the kids do not sleep, and so the kids will ask questions. Tani Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, Chodfin matzos b'leili Pesachim b'shvil tinokos shelo yishnu. He says that we should ideally eat our matzahs fast. It literally means eat the matzahs fast. It really means that we should start the Seder as early as possible, in order so that the kids can stay up for as much time without falling asleep. Ideally, the kids will get them a nap the afternoon before the Seder so that they can stay up late for the Seder as much as possible. And you want to start that Seder, we say around 50 minutes after sunset, basically whatever time Shabbos is over, say Sakochavim, that's the earliest time to begin the Seder. But the second that time hits, it's ideal to start ASAP. Not start early, you can't start early, but to start at that time. I know that some of my Rebbeim, they do not daven Mariv, like what we do at Young Israel. They will not daven Mariv at sunset. They only will daven Mariv after Tseis, so that they can fulfill the mitzvah of Kriya Shema at the same time. However, one of my Rebbeim in Silver Spring, he, 2 nights a year, on the 2 nights of the Seder, davens Mariv at sunset in order so that he can go home at the proper time, and they can start the second that they're able to, so that their kids can enjoy the Seder as much as possible. So it says, Amar Olav, Rabbi Akiva, it says on Rabbi Akiva, Miyamav lo amar hegia eis lamod bebeis hamedrash. Rabbi Akiva would never kick somebody out of beis medrash. If a person is going to sit there and learn, Rabbi Akiva says, stay as long as you want. However, 2 times a year, chutz me'arbi Pesachim v'arbi Yom Kippurim, except for Erev Pesach and for Erev Yom Kippur, Rabbi Akiva kicks him out. He closes up shop, no more beis medrash, go home. Why? Be'erev Pesach, bishil tinokos. On Erev Pesach, it's because of the kids. Whether that's to go home early in the afternoon, to help the wife get them down for a proper nap, so the kids can stay up for the Seder. Or it means to go home earlier so that you can start your Seder as soon as possible. Don't stay around with your chavrusa. Don't stay around to learn a little bit more. No, go home. Also, Yom Kippurim, on Erev Yom Kippur, so that's Kedei Sheyochilu Es B'neihem. There's a special mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. If we saw in 5th and 6th grade that if you eat on Erev Yom Kippur, the day before Yom Kippur, is if you fasted both the day before Yom Kippur and Yom Kippur. So the Gemara over here is saying that there's a specific mitzvah to feed your children Erev Yom Kippur as well, when you're hopefully eating. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about just the concept of making kids excited for the Seder. I just want to share something. I don't do this often, but this Sefer, this book, Timepieces, it was written by my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Aaron Lopiansky. It has some wonderful English selections that he's written. I just want to share one of them. He writes a letter to his child for the message that he wants to give over to the Seder. I know my sister-in-law, she reads this to her children every single Seder night when they get to Vehisha Amda in the Seder. So I'll go ahead. I'm going to include this in our packet because I think it's a very nice thing. So it says, "My dear child, it's now a quiet moment late at night. After an exhausting day of Passover cleaning, you've sunk into the sweetest of sleeps, and I'm sitting here with a pile of Haggadahs preparing for Seder night. Somehow the words never come out the way I want them to, and the Seder evening is always unpredictable. But so many thoughts and feelings are welling up in my mind, and I want to share them with you. These are the words I mean to say at the Seder. When you'll see me at the Seder dressed in a kittel, the same plain white garment worn on Yom Kippur, your first question will be, why are you dressed like this? We'll answer, because it's Yom Kippur. It's a day of reckoning. You see, each one of us is a double role. First and foremost, we are human beings, creatures in the image of God. And on Yom Kippur, we are examined if indeed we are worthy of that title. But we're also components of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, links in a chain that started over 3,000 years ago, and will make it to the finish line of the end of times. It's a relay race where a torch is passed on through all the ages. It's our charge to take it from the one before and pass it on to the one after. Tonight we're being judged as to how well we have received our tradition and how well we're passing it on. It's now 3,300 years since we received our freedom in Egypt. If we imagine the average age of having a child to be about 25 years of age, there are 4 generations in each century. That means there's a total of 132 people stretching from our forefathers in Egypt to us today. 132 people had to pass on this heritage flawlessly, with a devotion and single-mindedness that could not falter. Who were these 132 fathers of mine? One was in the Nazi death camps. One was whipped unconscious by the Cossacks. One had children stolen by the Tsar. And one was the laughingstock of his enlightened brethren. One lived in a basement in Warsaw with many days passing with no food crossing his lips. The other ran an enormous estate in France. One was burned at the stake for refusing to believe in the divinity of a flesh and blood mortal. And one was frozen to death in Siberia for continuing to believe in the divinity of the eternal God. One had been hounded by a mob for living in Europe rather than Palestine, and one was blown up by the Palestinians for not living in Europe. One was a genius who could not enter medical school because he was not a Christian, and one was fed to the lions by the Romans. 132 fathers, each with his own story, each with his own test of faith, and each with one overriding and burning desire, that this legacy be passed unscathed to me, and each with one request of me, that I pass this on to you, my sweet child. What is this treasure that they've given me their lives for? What is in this precious packet that 132 generations have given up everything for? It's a great secret. That man is capable of being a lot more than intelligent primate. That the truth of an almighty God does not depend on public approval. And no matter how many people jeer you, truth never changes. That the quality of life is not measured by goods, but by the good. That one can be powerfully hungry, and yet one can forgo eating it if it's not kosher. That a penny that's not mine is not mine, no matter the temptation or rationalization. That family bonding is a lot more than birthday parties. It's a commitment of loyalty that does not buckle in a moment of craving or lust, and so much more. This is our precious secret, and it's our charge to live it and to become a shining display of this is what it means to live with God. 132 people have sat Seder night after Seder night, year after year, and with every fiber of their heart and soul had made sure that this treasure would become mine and yours. Doubters have risen, who are busy sifting the sands of the Sinai desert, trying to find some dried out bones as residues of my great-great-grandfather. They're looking in the wrong place. The residue is in the soul of every one of these 132 grandfathers, whose entirety of life was wrapped up in the preservation of this memory and treasure. It's unthinkable that a message born with such fervor and intensity against such challenges and odds is the result of a vague legend or the fantasy of an idle mind. I am the 133rd person in this holy chain. At times I doubt if I'm passing it on well enough. I try hard, but it's difficult not to quiver when you're on the shoulders of 132 people, begging you not to disappoint them by toppling everyone with you, swaying in the wind. My dear child, may God grant us many long and happy years together. But one day in the distant future, I'll be dressed in a kittel again as they prepare me for my burial. Try to remember that this is the treasure that I passed on to you. And then it will be your turn. You'll be the 134th with the sacred duty to pass it on, our legacy, to number 135. Okay, so I will put that in the packet. That's what we're talking about here. Passing on the Masorah, this deep tradition that we have, to the next generation. Okay, so we're gonna almost done here. The Gemara says, Taner Rabbanan. The rabbis taught in the Brisa. Chayiv Adam l'sameach banav ubnei beiso b'regel. A person is obligated to make his children and all the rest of the people in his house happy on Yontif. Shnemar, the pasuk says, "V'samachta b'chagecha." You should be happy in your holidays. B'ma misamcham. What are you supposed to make people happy with? What else? B'yayin. You're supposed to do with wine. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, anashim b'roi lahem, v'nashim b'roi lahem. Men are supposed to get what's befitting to men, and women are supposed to get what's befitting to women. At least back then, there were differences. Anashim b'roi lahem b'yayin. Men back then used to get happy with wine. V'nashim b'mai. What do women get happy with? Tani Rav Yosef, it depends where you are. But Bavel, it's the big day tzvunin. In Bavel, Babylonia, they used to get happy with colored clothes. But Eretz Yisrael, the big day pishtin, megutznin. So they would get happy with ironed linen type of clothes in Eretz Yisrael. So we see whatever would make one's wife or one's children happy, that's what we have the obligation to buy for them, to get them excited for Yom Tov, and for ourselves as well. For all men, we're supposed to get ourselves happy, whether that's wine or something else. Tani Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim, ein simcha ela b'basar. When the Beis Hamikdash was still standing, the only simcha that we had was through meat. Shnemar v'zavachta shlomim ve'achalta sham v'samachta lifnei Hashem Elokecha. The pasuk says that we would get tremendous simcha, tremendous happiness from bringing different korbanos and different sacrifices, and we would get to eat the meat. So back when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, the proper simcha we had was with meat. But achshav she'ein Beis Hamikdash kayim. What about now that the Beis Hamikdash isn't standing anymore? Ein simcha ela b'yayin. Person only gets happy from wine. Shnemar v'yayin yismach leiv enosh. That wine makes the heart of people happy. So now the Gemara says, Amar Yitzchak, Kista de Murisa de Habitzipuri, he has Kamin Luga de Mekadsha. So we're talking about some type of fish oil container. It measured a lug. A lug is 4 reviuses, 4 times the drinking amount the person would have for each cup. So that's what they would use to measure how much wine you're supposed to drink Seder night. Amar Yochanan, Tamnisa Kadmaisa Dehava B'Tiberia. In Tiberia, they use some other type of measuring device. Habi Yasera Al Da Riva, V'Ba Misharon Revius Shal Pesach. This container they used was actually the same measurement as the first measuring device we talked about, but it's a revius larger. So if you pour from one container to the other one, so you would end up with a revius left in the larger one. And that's how you would know how big a revius is if you didn't have a measuring cup to see how many fluid ounces it is. So Amr B'Chista, revius shel Torah, etzbayim al etzbayim barum etzbayim v'chatzi etzba v'chomesh etzba. So we say that what's called the revius shel Torah, the revius of the Torah, i.e., how much a nazir, a person that makes a neder, a vow not to drink wine, how much is that you would have to drink to break your vow and then have to follow up with all the punishments from that, would be what's 2 thumbs by 2 thumbs by 2 7/10 thumbs. Kidatanya, as we learned from a Brisa, quoting a pasuk from Vayikra, it says, "Barachatz b'mayim es kol basaro." When a person dunks in the mikvah, they should wash their entire body inside of it. Shelo yehei davar chotzetz bein basar l'mayim, in order that there will not be what's known as a chatzitza, a barrier between their body and the water. The water should be able to cover a person's entire body. Same for men, same for women. Whenever they go to the mikvah, b'mayim b'mei mikvah es kol b'saro mayim shekol gufo ole bahen. So the water in a mikvah should be able to cover the person's entire body. So b'kama hain, how much is that? We're going to figure out tomorrow that it is actually 40 saw. You can translate into gallons tomorrow. But in a nutshell, what do we do tonight? So we said all 4 cups of wine and your matzah eating is going to require heseba. It's going to require leaning on the left side for 2 reasons. One is because it's easier to use your right hand, but don't worry, even if you're a lefty, it's better to do the heseba on the left side as well, because at least according to Chazal, medically it would be easier to swallow the matzah. It would go down your esophagus and not chas v'shalom a person's windpipe. So even lefties will do leaning on their left side. Gemara says that married women do not need heseba because they should have some fear in front of their husband. But if they're known as an isha chashuva, a value important lady, which all women today are, of course, then they would need heseba. The Ramah says that partnered with the fact that originally women did not lean, plus the Rabbiyah, it says nobody noble today leans. So according to the Ramah, women should not lean in front of their husbands. However, there is a debate about it. There's a lot of people with Masorah that married women do lean. So continue whatever Masorah you have. If you don't have a Masorah, then it's time to ask a Rav. And we also said there's a special mitzvah Seder night to be mechanech, to educate the children. That's really the night for it. We want to keep them engaged so we get them to ask questions. We want to give them candy as a reward just for asking questions, even if we don't have an answer for them, but just to get them excited about the questions. That's the main point. And we want to make sure to start that Seder as early as possible. So around 50 minutes after sunset, whenever Shabbos would be over, that would be the time to start. Okay. Any questions on what we've done?
Yeah, I want to know when we were specifying the notion of Rov Kos, is that where we learn out all the halachot of Rov Kos? Or is there another place where that comes in the Gemara?
I'm not sure. Let me see. It says, I could look it up. I mean,
okay.
Where it's quoted in Shulchan Aruch. I can see Shulchan Aruch shows other places it mentions in Shas, probably in Brachos, maybe in Shabbos, in Erevin, I think talks about it.
Because the issue is that where we saw it here tonight had an issue with Rov Kos as the minimum you could drink, but not necessarily the inverse of that, meaning that you have to have at least Rov Kos. Right?
Our Gemara said here that the Mavarech, the person making the bracha, would have Rov Kos, the majority, and then you could pass out the rest to the other people, because technically the regular person only has to drink Rov Kos anyway. It's better to drink the whole thing, but if you can't, drink the half.
Right, but the question is if you, at least when I was listening to this, I was trying to think about this following scenario. So if a kos is of a certain size, right? So if a kos is much bigger than a revius, and you have to drink Rov Kos of it, does the Rov Kos still apply, or is it just simply the total amount of liquid that you're drinking?
It's a good question. The Rov Kos does apply. So it's always better to get a smaller glass and drink the whole thing, or at least half, than for sure having a bigger glass like some Elio Navi Kos and not finish.
Right. So the question is, do they learn that out of this Gemara here, or do they learn that halacha from another Gemara? That was the question that I was thinking about.
Specifically in regards to Seder, I think it's brought down here. In regards to Havdalah, I think it's brought down other places. Havdalah, we say Rov Kos, and for Seder night, also we say Rov Kos.
But for Kiddush, you also say Rov Kos, don't you?
Yeah.
Just standard Kiddush, right?
Right.
That's why Stan always gets a 16-ounce glass and fills it with whiskey before he makes Kiddush, because
so
he can at least
Kiddush,
get 9 ounces.
Kiddush, if a person, as long as a person had a sip to start that Mali Lugmav, right, filling the cheek full, then that would be okay to then go ahead and have mazonos or to have bread. Havdalah, though, specifically, and Seder night, you want to chug at least Rov Kos right in one shot.
Yeah. Okay. Shkoyach. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
I gotta go downstairs and clean the downstairs refrigerator for Pesach, so I gotta go.
Oh boy.
Bye, everybody. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. It has begun. Strategies for making my wife less anxious. That's what we're doing.
I'll tell you tomorrow if I'm going to clean the refrigerator. I find out from the government they'll let me into Israel.
Let's
just in case. It's like wearing your pajamas inside out.
What's that?
Just in case, it's like wearing your pajamas inside out for a snow day.
Oh.
I never heard of that.
And you get all your homework done the night before, and then if you do all your homework, then there's no school the next day. So if you clean out your refrigerator, then Israel will let you go.
I can tell you something really important that Rav Silver said to me one time when it was snowing heavily on Shabbos, and he said, "You know what the children call snow on Shabbos? The bracha alav tala."
Right? Very funny.
a complete waste. Oh, well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care, everybody. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.